This program is brought to you by realestate.com.au. With more homes for sale than anywhere else, realestate.com.au is Australia's #1 address in property.
It is good to have your company here on Business Weekend. Well, tomorrow being the first of the month, the latest home price indices will be released. What we already know is that they will be, yet again, higher, defying the interest rate rises delivered by the Reserve Bank. Now, every prospective homeowner and investor is watching for the key signs that interest rates will fall. But when? I spoke with REA Group senior economist Paul Ryan, who notes that while population keeps rising, the pressure is not coming off property prices anytime soon.
So all our indicators are pointing to continued home price growth across the capitals. Pretty solid growth. That's been the surprising thing this year. We saw a bit of a slowdown in late 2023, but price growth has rebounded in early 2024. And it's been those smaller capitals. So Adelaide and Perth have been the ones that have really led growth so far this year. OK,
so is that really, again, another suggestion that investors and home buyers are trying to get in advance of interest rate cuts from the Reserve Bank? So the timing of that becomes very crucial.
I think that's a big part of it. I think we've seen people be more aggressive at auctions, understanding that their borrowing power is going to be a little stronger later in the year and trying to get ahead of that. But also, I mean, we're seeing just strong demand conditions. That's been the big thing that's turned the property market around throughout 2023 and 2024.
OK, but in the past few weeks, we've even seen some really strong auction weekends. Even this Easter weekend, the number of auctions is still very high, despite the fact that a lot of people go away. So it shows that really the market is quite dynamic at the moment. Some seeking to upgrade, some seeking to take advantage of price. And quite clearly on the other side, there's a demand when those properties hit the market.
Yeah, we've seen strong listings activity so far this year, strong auction numbers, but there's been enough buyers to absorb all of that extra stock that's come on the market and continuing to see prices rise. I mean, this is a really healthy market. And that's what we haven't really seen for so far. OK, so in the last little while, we've seen a number of economic sort of signals come out. We've seen the monthly inflation rate, which this week gone is flat, 3.4%. So still not in the 2 to 3% band, but certainly not going up. On top of that, we've also seen employment numbers, which have suddenly come down, which was a surprise for February, because in many ways that's expected to keep on rising. There's also migration numbers out there as well. So population stats show around 580,000 population increase in Australia in the past year, 580,000 migrants rather coming into the country. So the property markets, we always know, it's a case of follow the population. Does that come out in the house price numbers that you're currently seeing? Yeah, there's been a really strong correlation between those population growth numbers and home price growth over the past year. Perth, out of all the capitals, saw the strongest population growth of 3.6%. We've seen Perth prices up 16% over the past year. Brisbane and Sydney both recorded really strong population growth numbers and have both hit really strong home price growth as well. The real outlier has been Melbourne, where we saw population growth up by 3.3%. in the last financial year, but prices have only increased 1% over the past year.
But that could also say something about some of the taxes that the government there is imposed upon home buyers and investors and those with holiday houses. So all of that means that maybe just the price or the cost of owning a property in Victoria now is much higher or is perceived to be much higher, and hence the appetite actually is not as great.
That's potentially part of it. But I think the big story here is it shows the importance of home building. Victoria's done a better job of building more homes than other states. They've built per capita 35% more homes over the 2022-23 financial year than any other state. So I think that's the real thing that's putting downward pressure on home prices there. And other states are starting to take notice. They're trying to enable more home building.
OK, so but to build more homes, you need, as we've talked about before, the profit incentive for the developer to build that home. Now, you'd think price is one incentive, but you've got to have the certainty that A, your property project is not going to be delayed, that you can get the equipment and labour at the right price to build that, so that you ultimately know when you're starting to put the shovels in the ground that there will be a profit in it at the end of it, in all likelihood.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think bringing that certainty, the thing that the government can absolutely do is make more sites viable by changing planning laws. And that brings down the cost of new land, which means that there's more of that buffer in it for developers. So if there is uncertainty, they've got more ability to absorb that.
Okay, and the reality is that the more properties you can build, then quite clearly the greater pressure you take off rents as well. So therefore, all of this becomes, rather than the virtual cycle of pushing house prices up continuously, making it a bit more sustainable and overcoming the prospect of a boom and bust.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think exchanging development at the edge and fringes of our cities, which is something we've tended towards over the past 10 or 20 years. It's really difficult to provide services to new developments on the outskirts of cities, to more infill development. Are there more opportunities to build around the transport and other infrastructure we already have?
But there's a little bit of irony there, because while you say that, over the past couple of years at least, while home prices have taken off again, that is house prices, apartment prices have not been anywhere near as robust. So if you go for urban infill, you've got to go for apartments. And so right now, the incentive to build those apartments perhaps also is not as great as it is to build those homes on the outskirts of cities.
So there's been a bit of preference shift towards bigger homes. We saw that through the pandemic. I think that's pulling back a little bit. And in particular, as we see investors come back into the market and what they're looking to provide for renters is smaller dwellings. It's rental units, it's townhouses, things like that. We've seen actually a unit price growth over the past kind of 3 to 6 months pick up quite strongly.
Okay, so we'll see those numbers coming out from PropTrack and REA about what's happened in the past month's home prices. That'll come out tomorrow.
Yep, looking forward to it.
Good stuff. Thanks, Paul.